Everyone keeps asking when. When does the switch flip? When does real institutional utility kick in? When does XRP move? When does Stellar finally go mainstream? Well, guess what? We're done guessing, because they just exposed the timeline. Not in hype posts. Not in community rumors. But in filings, roadmaps, integrations, and execution. And for once, XRP and XLM aren't just part of the story. They are the story. Now it's time to lay it all out. Subscribe if you're ready to front-run the institutions, not follow them. The pipeline was never about price. IT was about infrastructure. Let's start with the biggest lie retail was sold. That XRP and XLM are just coins waiting to moon. That framing has distracted the entire market from what these assets really are. Infrastructure tokens for a completely new financial system. Core components of DLT-based settlement networks. The rails for CBDCs, cross-border payments, and on-off ramps. But here's what most people missed. The price action doesn't come first. The infrastructure does. Because the real value of these assets isn't based on hype cycles or exchange listings. It's based on utility within systemic architecture. You don't value fiber optic cables based on social media sentiment. You value them based on how much global data they move. Same with XRP and XLM. And for the past 24 months, Ripple and Stellar weren't chasing attention. They were integrating into the plumbing of global finance. Let's break that down. Stellar has quietly connected to MoneyGram, turning every retail outlet in 180-plus countries into a fiat crypto cash-in/out terminal, all on Stellar rails. Visa via Circle USDC, enabling direct, tokenized dollar ramps through Stellar for compliant stablecoin infrastructure. Tempo, Europe, Cowrith, Africa, Flutterwave, Nigeria. Regional liquidity hubs that embed XLM liquidity into localized financial ecosystems. And none of this was speculative. It was engineered, partnered, and executed. The result? A truly global, tokenized financial access network, and XLM sits at the center. Meanwhile, Ripple moved just as strategically. Finastra RippleNet was integrated into the core banking software of 600-plus institutions. Swift GPI pilots, the same network responsible for $5 trillion in daily cross-border flows, tested interoperability with XRP settlement. Tranglo Ripple acquired a 40% stake, positioning itself at the heart of APAC liquidity corridors. Bank of America, Santander, silent RippleNet clients, waiting for legal clarity before activating public integrations. Hidden Road, a stealth move into institutional prime brokerage, enabling FX desks to settle with XRP as the underlying asset. All of that happened during a time when most of crypto was distracted by memes, NFTs, and Layer 1 hype wars. Ripple and Stellar didn't pivot to speculation. They doubled down on integration, because for them, the end goal wasn't retail FOMO. It was systemic replacement. And now, the infrastructure is live. The compliance frameworks are cleared. The liquidity partners are on board. What comes next isn't testnet. It's activation. The rails have already been laid. And the switch isn't something they talk about anymore. It's something they're flipping. XRP and XLM timelines. They're not hiding it anymore. You don't have to guess when things go live anymore. They've literally told us. This isn't about speculative hope anymore. It's about disclosed execution. We now have hard timestamps, real business integrations, and formal licensing progress. And the names involved aren't startups. They're the giants of finance and payments. Ripple's institutional expansion timeline, Q2 2024. Ripple's acquisition of standard custody finalized, cleared for qualified custodianship. This means Ripple now has direct control over regulated custody infrastructure, a prerequisite for onboarding large institutional clients. Q3 2024. Launch of Ripple Liquidity Hub 2.0. Ripple expands its liquidity aggregation product to allow institutions to tap not just crypto markets, but real-time foreign exchange, tokenized assets, and XRP-backed settlements. Q4 2024, Q1 2025. Integration of Hidden Road's prime brokerage network. This is the big one. Hidden Road quietly powers many of the institutional desks behind the scenes. Once XRP settlement plugs into that framework, It brings Ripple into the same clearing pipelines as hedge funds, FX trading platforms, and institutional market makers. Ripple isn't theorizing. It's turning XRP into an asset that lives where the trillions flow. Stellar's Soroban timeline. Mainnet smart contract launch is live, Q2 2024. Soroban now supports production-grade smart contracts, built from the ground up for scalability, compliance, and minimal gas fees. Palago Labs onboarding SME partners, Q2, Q3 2024. Stellar is going beyond DeFi speculation and entering the world of real-world finance. Palago is launching credit lines for small and medium enterprises through Soroban smart contracts. MoneyGram Stellar native wallet integration, late 2024. This is the sleeper. Once live, it allows for tokenized dollar usage, digital cash movement, and ramp access in 180-plus countries all over Stellar. Not Ethereum. Not Solana. Stellar. What does that tell us? The real timeline isn't when moon. It's when global infrastructure flips from testing to production. And now we're entering that production phase. Not next year. Not during the next bull cycle. Now, if you're still waiting for some YouTube influencer to confirm that the pump has begun, you're already too late. Because by the time the charts confirm it, the institution's already positioned. The ones who built the system are now flipping the switch on their timelines. And the only question left is whether you're going to front-run what's coming, or FOMO in after the transfer begins. The global reset is structural, and they picked the rails. Everyone's focused on price predictions. Everyone wants to know what candle is next, or when we get the next 300% move. But that's not the story. The real story is who got selected to carry the global financial system forward. We're not talking about speculation anymore. We're talking about selection. And Ripple and Stellar have already been chosen. Let's break it down. First, the BIS Bank for International Settlements. The BIS, often called the Central Bank of Central Banks, has given the global monetary system a clear mandate: achieve full CBDC interoperability by 2025. They didn't leave that up to chance. They named the tech, they built pilot frameworks, and Ripple and Stellar were quietly baked into the testbed. The IMF isn't guessing either. They've been testing multi-CBDC frameworks for years, especially around compliance, privacy, and cross-border conversions. And guess which networks keep coming up in those reports? Stellar as a lightweight, fast, and compliant settlement layer. Ripple for real-time FX corridors and tokenized asset clearing. These networks weren't listed as theories. They were implemented in actual IMF sandbox programs and referenced in white papers and panel discussions. Then there's the DCMA, Digital Currency Monetary Authority. Their UMU, Universal Monetary Unit, a cross-border CBDC layer asset, is being built to interlink with RippleNet and Stellar Anchors by design. Not Ethereum, not Solana, not Bitcoin, Ripple and Stellar. Because this isn't about block time. It's about compliance, trust, interoperability, and speed. Real deployments are already underway. MoneyGram is actively deploying tokenized assets via Stellar, positioning XLM as the underlying asset layer for global remittances. Ripple's ODL, on-demand liquidity, isn't an idea. It's being used right now by banks and financial service providers in Singapore, the UAE, Brazil, and Latin America to move real volume across borders. And that's what separates XRP and XLM from the pack. This isn't about potential anymore. This is about existing, live, deeply integrated financial rails. The G20, BIS, IMF, and World Bank know exactly what they're building. They've spent the last 3 years talking about the need for interoperable payment systems, the danger of isolated CBDC silos, the requirement for cross-border liquidity optimization. Guess who has the solutions? Ripple and Stellar. Not hypothetically, not in pitch decks, in code, in production, in partnerships. XRP and XLM are the only digital assets with real integration into global FX pipelines, production-ready compliance rails, proven pilot results with real central banks and payment processors. And while the media's busy talking about Bitcoin ETFs, the pipes for a $180 trillion financial reset are already being laid. And they're not using meme coins or vaporware. They're using systems that can settle trillions across borders with compliance baked in. Ripple and Stellar aren't just in the room. They're part of the blueprint. This is why XRP and XLM stayed quiet. Until now. You might ask, why haven't the prices reflected all of this yet? Why hasn't the market reacted to the largest banking integrations, or the fact that Ripple and Stellar are now quietly powering global infrastructure? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The people building the system never wanted retail to front-run the reset. It wasn't a glitch. It was by design. They didn't want attention. They wanted position. And that's exactly what they got. Step 1. Suppress the narrative. Ripple was sued in December 2020, just as on-demand liquidity began its rapid expansion across Asia and LATAM. Exchanges delisted XRP, driving retail away while institutions onboard quietly under NDAs. Stellar's upgrades flew under the radar, including Soroban's smart contract development, which was intentionally rolled out without hype. Media coverage disappeared, no CNBC interviews, no speculative clickbait because that would have signaled retail. Step 2. Quiet accumulation. While you were distracted by meme coins, AI tokens, and ETF hype, custody rules changed. Banks got the green light to hold digital assets. Ripple acquired Medico and Standard Custody, locking down compliant institutional-grade infrastructure. Stellar Foundation increased its holdings and partnerships, prepping for production-level deployment. Meanwhile, real players were buying, not to pump, to integrate. The silence wasn't coincidence. It was accumulation by those who knew exactly what was coming. Step 3. Flip the switch. Now the switch is flipping. Ripple won the SEC case. XRP is not a security, confirmed by the courts. Soroban is live on mainnet. Stellar smart contracts are ready for production, with low fees and compliance-first architecture. Institutional custody is legal. BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan, everyone's moving into real-world asset tokenization. And suddenly, the silence is breaking. XRP was relisted on Coinbase and Kraken. XLM trading volume spiked 300% in under 72 hours. BlackRock's tokenized asset division began sourcing on-chain liquidity. Fidelity launched crypto exposure funds that include utility tokens, not just Bitcoin and ETH. This is not a meme coin pump. This is institutional rollout. You weren't meant to see it until it was too late. This is how systems are replaced. Quietly, structurally, with full legal frameworks in place before the crowd shows up. You were told XRP and XLM were dead. But they were just being positioned not for hype but for control. And now, the control phase is nearly complete. So when prices start moving, it's not a breakout, it's an activation. Because the only thing more powerful than speculation is planned implementation. And that's what Ripple and Stellar were doing while everyone else was asleep. The window is closing, and the transfer is starting. The market's still asleep. Everyone's watching Bitcoin hit $90K, chasing ETFs, following meme coins. Meanwhile, XRP is embedding into global FX systems. XLM is running tokenized trade finance. CBDC pilots with Stellar and Ripple are hitting phase 2. By the time XRP hits $5 and XLM hits $1, the transfer is already in motion. Not hype, execution, integration, activation. The difference between speculation and wealth is timing. And the timeline is not a mystery anymore. They told us the plan, now it's about position. This isn't financial advice, it's awareness. You're not betting on a coin, you're aligning with the monetary rails of the future. Ripple and Stellar weren't built for hype. They were built to solve real-world trillion-dollar problems. And now, the switch is flipping. The timelines are active. You can be early, or you can be left reacting. Your choice. Subscribe to Be Crypto Smart for more XRP, XLM, and institutional crypto breakdowns.